United States is warning that it will now stone gay people to death. And if you steal, anybody steals, you get your hands and feet cut off. And celebrities are now calling for a boycott of the hotels owned by this particular ruler. He is the Sultan of Brunei. You may have read about this on your feed or in a newspaper somewhere. He just rolled out new religious laws for Brunei, which include jailing unmarried women who get pregnant and jailing people who do not pray. And he owns hotels in the United States and elsewhere, and celebrities are like, don't give him your money. Jonathan Hunt's reporting. He's live at our Mideast newsroom. Jonathan?
Chef, the new laws are part of Brunei's Sharia code. They include the following punishments for what the Sultan of Brunei considers among the worst crimes.
What did he say? Sharia code? Sharia code comes from the Sharia law. The Sharia law comes from Saudi Arabia. Once more, we're dealing with a nation that has already agreed to allow for this country to have nuclear power. I don't know what's going on in the White House, but whatever it is, we're going to end up having to pay for mistakes that has been made for the past 3 or 4 administrations. And the bottom line is this: those people over there that live in that Sharia law atmosphere pertaining to Saudi Arabia government is the very axis of evil that not only assassinated a news anchor, but also masterminded 9/11, and that if the Lord Jesus Christ was to come back there in flesh, they would have him executed immediately because they are an anti-Christ type environment or entity. Listen to the rest of this. This is pretty barbaric and extreme.
Death by stoning for rape, adultery, sex between men, robbery, and insulting the Prophet.
Let's back up again. Let's get it all.
Laws for Brunei, which include jailing unmarried women who get pregnant and jailing people who do not pray. And he owns hotels in the United States and elsewhere, and celebrities are like, don't give him your money. Jonathan Hunt's reporting. He's live at our Mideast newsroom. Jonathan?
Chef, the new laws are part of Brunei's Sharia code. They include the following punishments for what the Sultan of Brunei considers among the worst crimes: death by stoning for rape, adultery, sex between men, robbery, and insulting the Prophet Muhammad, 40 strokes by cane and or 10 years in jail for women who have sex with each other, amputation for theft, first a hand, then a foot. Introducing the new laws, the Sultan said Brunei's system, known locally as MIB for Malay Islamic System, is fair and just.
System MIB has proven to be very friendly to the world. Anyone who visits this country will have a sweet experience, immersed in a safe and harmonious atmosphere, and enjoy good services. This is the reality in Brunei, a MIB nation. Without this ideology, it is not Brunei.
The Sultan is worth billions of dollars and owns hotels all over the world, including the Bel Air and the Beverly Hills Hotel in Los Angeles. Celebrities including Ellen DeGeneres and George Clooney are now urging a boycott of those hotels. Ellen writing on Twitter, quote, "Raise your voices now, spread the word, rise up," and Clooney writing on Deadline Hollywood, quote, "Are we really going to help fund the murder of innocent citizens?" The US, by the way, is urging the Sultan to reconsider these new laws. Chef?
Jonathan Hunt live tonight in Jerusalem.
Basically, the MIB is part of the old Mosaic Judaism laws, which is based around an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. They have never done a full circle in regard to the law of grace that now we are under, in regard to if we sin, we have an advocate with the Father, which is the Lord Jesus Christ, that maketh intercession prayer for you and I. That way we don't have to worry necessarily about lightning coming out of the sky, striking us down dead, or we don't have to worry about some madman ruler such as the Saudi prince or this guy here towards coming after us with a machete. I understand the dynamics in behind their laws dealing with such heathenistic, barbaric, cruel, insensitive people. Okay? Not to say that their laws is right, but I understand them. On the other hand, you got to look at our laws towards what has occurred, with our citizens continually being violated, either by being raped, robbed, murdered, or in other areas just slandered because they're Christians or taken advantage of. You got to look at our laws towards wondering if we have gone too far to the far left as much as their laws has gone too far to the far right. There has to be some sort of middle ground in regard to being not harsh enough to the degree of being too harsh. And that's what we're seeing again and again and again pertaining to the old Mosaic laws that are still in place over in certain parts of the Middle East versus the new compromised laws that we're accustomed to over here. If you look at the dynamics of the American laws, our laws basically changed shortly after the Civil War. Experts say somewhere around the First World War is whenever our laws over here went through a transformation period to the point that you was no longer allowed to have a private lynching just because of 4 or 5 people that felt like an individual needed to be hung by the end of a rope out here in the middle of the street somewhere, or out here in the middle of the courtroom somewhere, simply because that is the way that they felt like that this person needed to be punished. Our laws conformed after World War I, but I tend to wonder if our laws have conformed too much in regard to the molestation of children, the rape of an innocent child, or even the murder, because we have become too lax over here, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. My opinion don't cost you nothing. Don't cost you a dime. But then again, on the other hand, looking at their laws, they're too harsh. You know, you can go to places like over in India, whenever you get to looking at transformation international laws. You can go to places over in other parts of the world to where if you get caught chewing gum, it's an automatic $500 fine. They've got different laws throughout different countries that are supposed to be in conjunction to bringing more stability and fairness to that region or to that group of people. Now, right now, we're facing off with Russia and China sticking their nose in events down in South America that ultimately are going to wind up on an international calamity scale that could be the beginning of some sort of a international disagreement between what's going on with the old ruler over in Venezuela versus the new one. Once more, it's a conflict of interest in regard to our way of life over here as far as a democracy versus their way of life versus communism. And you do have to recognize that the law of the Sharia law of the MIB is nothing more than a communism stance law towards trying to bring stability to that particular region. I've looked at this. I really have. I've looked at it very closely. And the reason why that I've looked at it is because after 9/11, whenever we made such of a harsh mistake in going to war with a group of people that was bringing somewhat of stability over to their region pertaining to Saddam Hussein, we used the ideology of wanting to bring more stability and fairness to a region by taking Saddam Hussein out. That motive was a good motive. There was nothing wrong with that motive. But where the experts over here failed was in recognizing that the type of people that Saddam Hussein was having to keep in check was not on the level of normalcy of a group of people that obey laws similar to the civilized society over here. The civilized society is different than the uncivilized society. There's a difference between the uncivilized society and the civilized society. The civilized society over here obey the speed limits. The civilized society over here know not to go out here and rape and know not to go out here and do certain things. The civilized society. The uncivilized society doesn't care. What we done by going over there to the Middle East and taking out a ruler, even though he was a harsh dictator, to say the least, in every aspect of life that you could imagine, he was maintaining a certain stance of law and order over in Iraq. When they assassinated him by hanging Saddam Hussein, it did create this massive vacuum to the point that now, instead of it bringing stability to the region, it actually brought more instability to the region due to the fact that you was not no longer ruling them with a iron fist or a heavy hand. It's almost like we're dealing with two completely different worlds. We're dealing with the old world, with the old Mosaic laws, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, versus the civilized world that changed after World War I into the regard of having juries and judges and laws based upon what that you either have or have not done in regard to your accusers. So, the old cliche goes back to the point of you can please part of the people all the time, all the people part of the time, but you'll never please all the people all the time. This is the area that the Western world needs to observe and realize that, yes, you feed them, but you feed them with a long spoon. You put them on a leash, but you put them on a very short leash. Because there's certain people that you just don't let them have enough leadway to bring that much more harm and destruction into not only their lives, but to everybody's lives around them. So to dance around this balancing act between the Sharia law, the old MIB entity, versus the law of democracy, it is still in or out in jury towards trying to figure out just exactly where the balancing act needs to begin and where the balancing act needs to end. Because in certain incidences, I can see over here in America to where we're not tough enough. And in lots of incidences, I can see over in the Sharia law to where they're way too overboard and too tough. But who am I? I am not a judge. I am not a jury. I am not an executioner. I cannot tell those people that has been known of the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ for as long as I've known them, probably all their lives, that this is the right way. Until they get enough of their own hypocrisy over there to bring a stance in regard towards what various actors are talking about today in boycotting this type of entity, this type of lifestyle, this type of order. Until they get enough of that, they'll probably continue doing what they're doing, which I think is barbaric and heathenistic on every level imaginable. Now, that's not to say that in some situations over here in America, we need to be more strenuous in our laws, especially whenever it comes to children, especially whenever it comes to the elderly and the innocent. But it's pretty obvious that their influences over there now are trying to influence our ways of habitat over here is strongly or in more so towards our Western way of life, trying to influence theirs. So you basically have a standoff between good and evil, evil and good. And I know, ultimately in the end, good will prevail. It always has. The right always exceeds over the wrong. We must just be careful, patient, and very vigilant in not allowing for these creepy type scenarios to come bombarding into our personal lifestyles to the point that we become like them. Because I personally rather take a knife and slit my throat from ear to ear than I would to live a barbaric, heathenistic lifestyle like the Sharia law or like the old MIB entity has been a part of for, I guess, the past 3,000-4,000 years. it hasn't been until just recently that the Saudi Arabian laws have allowed for women to drive. You talk about backwoods and behind. Some of their recourse is just, it goes beyond barbaricness. It goes to the point of being just cruel and unusual treatment to their citizens. And I'm so proud to be able to call myself an American of the original Constitution that was manufactured and designed for not only the unbelievers but also the believers over here in America, because at least I think we still have a fighting chance over here in America, not just towards being good Americans, but towards being good Christian Americans. And hopefully our light will resonate throughout the rest of the world to the point that they will willfully want to inject our ways of life to become accustomed to our ways. That way they can lead in a society that is fair and just for not only the powerful and the rich as far as their oligarchs, but also for their regular citizens too as well. Thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing to my viewers. Good luck to all of us. Shalom.